Hello, hello, everybody. Today it's May 20. It's my first appearance during the month of May, but it's actually my 16th episode of her journey, her way from corporate to founder. Oh my God, I just got air. Went the wrong way. I guess I'm so excited to be here with you that the air just went the wrong pipe. So I'm really happy because today's event is actually themed tech for good, and you'll know more about it when I bring up stage my special guest. But I want to set the stage. So for those of you who are new to listening to us, um, this event has been created for multiple reasons. Number one is I wanted to have the opportunity to share the stories of amazing women that have done that transition from the corporate world to entrepreneurship. I also want to make sure that um, I get the opportunity to motivate women who are within the corporate world and thinking about doing that transition, to them to do it. And then, last but not least, I also love that other people get the opportunity to just support power women, powerhouses that are shining in what they have been able to create. So, for those of you who are joining, I want to invite you to just share with us where you're connecting from, and feel free to ask us any questions that you may have. We're here to answer your questions, and if we can answer, we'll make sure that you get the response. With that said, for those of you who don't know me, I am a holistic transformational coach. I'm on a special mission to help people or professionals discover their inner worth, enhance their emotional intelligence, and embrace their path to freedom and purpose. I basically help people stop letting their emotions and their thoughts dictate what their life becomes. I allow people to experience what that true freedom feels like. With that said, I'm also a breathwork coach, and I guide people through somatic breathwork. And with that said, my name is Brenda Lisa Costa, and I'm so happy to be here with you today. Now, my special guest, her name is Kim Tercero. I'm going to bring her up stage pretty soon. She's the founder and principal of a company that it's focused a little bit on tech, a little bit on not diversity, but helping people expand the way that they see the professions and drive a lot of more social and environmental equity. She's an accomplished operations and technology professional with over 30 years of proven success in social enterprise organizations, nonprofits, startups, and small business. Both an empathetic and passionate leader, she continues to learn and be inspired by the cross functional teams she guides and mentors. She's committed significantly to social and environmental equity. Her values and actions are grounded in the belief that Black and Brown folks deserve to live in a healthy and thriving community. Kim is the proud daughter of immigrant parents and can be found in her personal time enjoying Lake Merritt neighborhood in Oakland, California. So we have a Californian here joining us. So welcome everybody, and give your welcome to Kim. I'm going to bring her up stage. Kim, I'm so happy you're here with me today. How are you today?
I'm good, Brendalise. Thank you for inviting me.
I am excited for people to learn more about your mission, especially what is around tech for good. I know you're doing so much amazing work. Um, I want to invite you to introduce yourself to the audience by letting them know who is Kim Tercero.
Thank you. So I'm a work in progress. I think it's been years of exploration. Started off as a an activist, social justice, looking to leave this world a little better than where I left it, and trying to figure out what that means. And so, journeyed through higher education, labor organizing, working in environmental sector. And so, being in as this theme of this podcast of kind of being in the corporate sector and figuring out how to find my place and my passion and my purpose. And so that led me to starting my own business. And so I think the journey from being, I think grounding my journey has been uh, being in community, being guided by you know my culture, my community and where I live, the community where I study, the community where I work. I think all those different relationships really have impacted where I'm going, and I think the journey that I will continue to be on.
Um, how long ago did you do the move from corporate to entrepreneurship?
Very recent. So that was in 2022 September. So my business is a Virgo. I am a Leo, and it was very recent, and it wasn't something that I was planning or that I dreamed of or I knew that I would eventually get to. I actually didn't relate to the term entrepreneur. I had this perception that entrepreneurship was selling, always selling something or putting something in the world, and just my worldview of we have enough stuff in the world, and so what would I really sell? What would be something that I would own and give out? And I realized that wasn't necessarily what entrepreneurship is or owning, and so it took me a minute to realize and kind of connect the dots of being able to provide service and being of service to others, um, is something that I can do for a living. Being in a nonprofit space in the past, that isn't always sustainable, especially being here in the Bay Area. That can be very challenging, and so being able to kind of figure out how to live sustainably, live a lifestyle that is holistic and nourishing, and still be able to contribute. And so it took me a while, and I'm still figuring out what that looks like. And that's actually been the really fun part of putting this business together, but figuring out how to kind of check those boxes and identify and kind of live through what that experience is of being an entrepreneur, being a small business.
I was able to connect with a lot of entrepreneurs during the last 18 days.
Mm,
Think there's a big common theme, which is you have to be constantly reinventing yourself. And like what the business looks like for today might be completely different than what the business will look like, I don't know, 6 months down the road. Because the
absolutely.
environment is constantly changing and you have to change in order to adjust to the environment. So what what before I go into how you have pivoted within entrepreneurship, I want to ask you what drove you to do that big leap.
I wish I had some, wonderful answer for that. It was very practical, very pragmatic. So I was at a company for over 11 years that did not serve me. I made a huge leap uh, to a new opportunity.
Mhm.
And actually, I didn't have an opportunity when I made that decision. We can get into that story. And so when this opportunity landed, it was exactly, the universe was like, this is a gift. This is what you need, and it was a preparation for what now is the role that I have now. And and it was a very short-lived experience. 6 months. I was in a B2B SaaS. I was overseeing head of IT and security, and unfortunately, it's in cannabis. We didn't touch the flower, but because it's associated cannabis, some complications, and the startup didn't we all layoffs. And so, I just had to figure out, okay, what was going to be my next move. And so I was still on that path of like looking for, a role. And I was having a conversation with an old colleague who was bringing me into an opportunity and was like, just whip up your LLC, whip up a, just start your, and she was just talking about it in such a casual way. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. I didn't connect the dots of like, okay, I can actually do this as a, just as a business. And so like, I just dove in. I'm a systems thinker. I'm an operations minded person. And so I did the website, I did the, I did all the paperwork. Right. And so I really like, uh, uh, was very serious about like putting this together. And so I just knew like it just made sense to me. As soon as that idea was in my head, I could visualize it, I could see it, I could feel it, I could smell it, right? It was just like, okay, this is something I'm supposed to be doing. And so I really got into building, and as you said, it's changing. So even from 2 years ago, just thinking about, okay, what is it that I actually am building here? What am I doing? I think that's been constantly evolving as I've been learning and really owning into this part of this journey that I'm on now.
It's interesting because it's like you mentioned about feeling, right? And tapping into all the emotions link into what it was becoming, right? And
Mm.
being able to tap into that, it's really powerful because it shifts your energetics, right? It shifts your vibration. And when you're able to live and tap into those emotions, you're bringing those emotions forward to now, and that helps facilitate the process. So I think the fact that you said how you did it and how you tapped into it, it's very magical because when you look at a lot of people who are really successful in launching their business or launching something big, it could be something different than just the business, they're able to tap into that the emotional aspects, and that's really important.
Well, I mean, we're balls of energy, right? I mean, we're whole beings, and I think in the last, COVID was kind of that monumental period where a lot of folks were able to reevaluate their priorities, right? How they were living, how they were spending their time, right? And so I think that's been still I think a theme and a priority for folks of like just your overall wellness, your priorities, right? Like we fall into this grind culture. I mean, I love the Nat ministry that really talks about rest is revolutionary, and so just being able to tap into your whole self and figure out what really is what brings you joy, what are things that fulfill you, right? And some of that can come from a place of privilege, right? Not everyone has that choice, not everyone has that experience currently to make those decisions, but if you're in that place where you can dream and think about what that would look like for you, and folks like us that can help folks put a plan together to get there. But I think in years past, people didn't even have that option, right? Didn't even know, especially as women, we were very limited. We weren't allowed to have credit up until like what, in the 60s. So a lot of our decision making, a lot of our how we maneuver through life has shifted and changed. And so going back to that emotion, yes, I mean that's a place of strength. And so just understanding just our energy, how our lived experience has impacted our thinking. I mean, I'm still unlearning a lot of behaviors that I I took on because I was in survival mode, because of different factors that I took on to be able to survive in a corporate world, right? To survive in being Andina, Latina, right? Like you can fill in the blanks of different uh, ways that I've survived in this world that does not necessarily support us or nurture us or center us. And so being able to take that and not only embrace it and understand it, but also use that as a superpower, if you will, and find like-minded folks that really want us to who acknowledge that part of our being. And so I think oftentimes in corporate, those characteristics are not valued, and I think that's actually what's caused some of these companies to not do well, is to not allow folks to really be their whole selves.
So, how do you recommend for the people who are listening to us to tap into that part of themselves, to respect themselves and tap into and embrace themselves? So, what would be your one or two tips for that?
Well, one is just acknowledge that it's hard to do. I mean, we have so many things that are attacking our nervous system right now. I mean, just the state of the world. I mean, I think almost every generation will say, you haven't had it as hard as we have, right? But it's all contextual. But we all, I think, can agree that we're living in some pretty hard times. And so just acknowledging that it's a difficult thing to do, and what works in for what has worked for me, or works for me is not going to necessarily work for you. So, but just to one, be in community. We're constantly being told that self-made. I did this on my own, right? And that's seen as some sort of badge of honor, which in it's very contradictory, right? I think being in community, asking for help, those are all places of strength. Those are all things that are what create thriving and healthy communities. And so, just building that community, whatever that may look like for you, that could be work friends, that could be family, that could be chosen family, that could, so just find your people, and find that space where you can be vulnerable and be around folks that can value you. I think that's a great first step, and just to be able to decompress. And then things like this, right? Find either it's a book or podcast or places that you can learn from others, to be able to figure out what are those things that you want to do. But I think so that was almost three, because it's I'm including the, like, just acknowledging that it's hard. I think just even getting to that piece is a journey in and of itself, and just to be able to stop and be able to think of that for yourself is already a huge first step.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I love that you said the part about community.
Mm,
Um, I do feel that even though I did have a good community while I was in corporate,
mm,
the community I've been able to build during the last 18 months to 24 months, it's completely different. And there's
mm.
still people from my corporate world, but there's people that are completely new. And I feel like part of my transformation has allowed me to tap into a bigger community, or a community that actually propels me. And I do feel as a entrepreneur that having that community of like-minded people, and people who are either more advanced than you or at the same stage as you, like a good combination of people, it's really important. Because we don't my biggest lesson is we don't need to do this journey alone. Even though people are
Yeah.
solopreneurs, the journey doesn't need to be alone. And that's why, in one way or another, I created this event, because for me, it it's really important for people to know that they're not alone in the journey. There's plenty of us going through the exact same journey as you are, as I am. And now I'm seeing here Lisa connect, as Lisa has been going through. So yes, community, oof, super important.
No, I love that you also shared that. I mean, we're not a monolith, right? And so we may have, I mean, we may have different communities that we relate to based on our intersections, right? So you may identify LGBTQ, you may identify immigrant, you may identify uh, you know, coming from a rural setting, or right, like all our different identities. We're not a monolith, and so even as a Indígena, even as a Latina, I mean, that means something very different for a lot of people. I mean,
Absolutely.
I've been in spaces of people that look like me that I don't feel comfortable or safe in, and so I think you're right. There are, there's different communities that serve different purpose, and it might be hard to find that one space where it's like this is all the parts of me, right? Because we have different elements that make us up, and so yeah, keep being curious. I mean, and that's something that I feel like has been beneficial for me, is that I'm a ferocious learner. I love to explore, and there are times when I'm like, whoops, nope, not that one. That's not for me, right? And there's other areas where I'm like, okay, yes, this is nourishing. This is something that I feel like is really beneficial. I'm learning, and I think another is a place where I can give, right, where I feel safe, where that I can also not only receive but also give, and that spirit of reciprocity. And so, yeah, you're not going to necessarily just find it in one place, and it's okay. Like some of these communities serve different purposes, and so we don't have
Absolutely.
to put too much, on a certain, but just allowing ourselves, and also to be in spaces like I know the term ally is thrown a lot, and it's not always. Sometimes we give ourselves that term, and it's more, maybe from the spirit in which we want to be, but that's really something that's earned. And so, I do also try to be in communities where I serve as an ally. So I'm mostly listening and advocating in the way that they need me to, not necessarily in the way that I say I should for them. And so, I think it's another a great space is to be in areas that maybe, you're not familiar with, or that are uncomfortable for you. Because, especially in, as folks that are either marginalized or disenfranchised, it's always important, I think, for us to figure out how our experiences have overlap and how we can support each other. And so, like being in those spaces and learning about communities, even if it's not your own, will also benefit you in your life in ways that you probably don't even realize.
You mentioned about knowing when to say no. Like,
Mm,
okay, this space is not right for me. I've always been one of those that I'm a people. Let me reframe that. I have been a people pleaser for a long time. I'm in recovery, and and I feel like one of my biggest challenge, even coming into entrepreneurship, was not being able, like saying yes to everybody. So whoever wanted to connect with me, I would always say yes. I will always be available for everybody, right?
mm.
Um, but we also have to protect our energy. We also have to protect ourselves, right? So was it easy for you to always easy for you to say no, this is not for me? Or how did you do that transition?
I mean, it varies, right? So it sometimes it comes from a place of need, and so the more we can create a place where we don't feel like we're in survival mode, I think that shifts. And so there are times when, I mean, I would probably say the majority of my corporate experience has been in places that I necessarily wouldn't say that I would want to be in, right? It was because I needed a paycheck, or I needed to pursue a title, I need to pursue a career to be able to survive in this world, right? And so uh, I don't think it's always. So I think it depends on your context and the situation. So as I so if we talk about like networking, for instance, where you're choosing which communities or which places that you want to make connections. I mean, we often hear, oh, actually, not even networking, but just within the corporate sector, where they say, "Oh, well, women, you eliminate yourself from opportunities because you're not doing the social activities that are sponsored by these corporations," right?
Oof, I
And we
heard
know
that many times.
it comes from a place of patriarchy, right? It comes from a place of, you look at it's usually around alcohol, right, which is not always conducive to people's culture or religious beliefs, right? Those sort of things. We can talk about, inclusion. So sometimes we don't really have those choices, or we don't think we have those choices because we're like, well, I have to follow this prescribed way of succeeding to make it, right? And so I think what we're finding now is a lot of, right, it's very, very
Mhm.
limited beliefs. However, we can't deny that there's systems that perpetuate that. systems that penalize those that don't follow the order. And when you do try to create something separate, right, you're met with a lot of resistance. And there are folks that are built to continue to fight for that. And we need those folks, right? We need folks that are at those tables, or the folks that say bring your chair and pull up a seat, even if you don't feel welcome, right? So there's folks that serve that role and can do it well, and there are those that can. That's okay, because everyone, we all have our purpose. Some of us are like, I'm just gonna go make my own table and do my own thing over here and have my own set of rules, and so that also serves a purpose as well. And so I think it's very contextual. It's definitely impacted by power and privilege. Absolutely, these systems that we know we all live under. And so it's just a matter of like your awareness of it, and where you want to play, if you will. And it's okay if for the moment that may serve you, and you're like, I can't anymore, this has caused me enough harm, or it's not something that I realize that my values just don't align, I want to do something else. And so I think it's just a matter of kind of where you're at in your either your consciousness, or in where you need to be, where you feel like you need to be in your career, right? Certain uh, decisions that you have to make because you are supporting your family, or you have goals that you want to achieve, and that's what's going to get you. But as long as you're aware of where you're at, but then if you're out in the universe doing your thing and trying to find communities, I mean, absolutely. I think I didn't understand what networking was at the beginning. I just thought it was like, white guys on the golf course, chumming it up. I didn't realize what networking really was. And for me, or maybe I'll reframe it, it was how I approached it and what it meant for me and how I wanted to conduct it. So it was about building relationships. It was about, um, you know, it was more values aligned. And so the more that I approached it with that lens and that practice, the much easier it was for me. So to your original question around like how did I figure out to say no, I approached it as I would any other where I was bringing people into my energy, into my world, into my ecosystem. Again, I knew what role or like what I was building, and then based on that, I would say, okay, does this community serve me? I think regardless of, I think earlier when you were saying how our businesses evolve and change, right? We as humans evolve and change, hopefully. We're constantly
Absolutely.
evolving and growing. And so, but I think at the core, there's an essence to us, right? There's that little piece, right? That is kind of our core of our being, of our spirit, of our energy. And so I think that piece, that essence that I always bring with me, no matter what space I'm in. And it's definitely there's definitely been moments where, and I think that's my that little voice that I know where if I have to code switch, or if I have to dilute a part of me, then that to me is already a note that that's not a place that I should be. And so again, that's kind of a broad statement, and I probably can't say a place right now that I don't do that, because I'm pretty I'm pretty transparent in where I stand and where I'm at, in my belief systems and how I roll. So I do that with my business. I do that in my personal life. I think most people kind of know where I stand on things, but uh, there's a time and place for certain conversations or certain I don't know, certain topics. But I would say for the most part, if you feel like you're diluting yourself, or if you feel like it's not aligned with your principles or values, then that's probably not going to be a place that's going to nurture you or uplift you in a way that you need to. And you won't realize it till later, because sometimes we don't know how to fill and receive gifts if we're not letting go of things that don't serve us. And sometimes we're holding on to that thing that we think we need, and we don't realize it until later that, like, we, I actually was holding space for something that didn't really allow me to grow and flourish.
It's interesting because I feel my last 2 years since I left corporate, which it's almost 2 years, almost,
Congratulations.
will be 2 years. Um,
Mm,
I feel like the shedding, like the letting go, the
mm,
getting rid of has been like constant through
Yes.
the 24 months. Since the moment I learned I was losing my job, I think from that moment on, which has been more than 24 months, um, that shedding, that letting go has been the constant, right? And yes, that's the only way we can embrace the new version of us, when we are really ready to let go of that old version. And I don't want to say we fully let go of everything who that we were. We keep being in essence who we are, like you mentioned, but we just evolve to become better. So is there any transformation, any big moment of serendipity or aha or awakening that Kim Tercero has gone through in during her transitions?
I mean, always, constantly. Um,
So
I think
share with us one that like meant a lot for you and how it changed your life, if you can.
that wow, that's a big one. I'd have to like. I feel like I need to go sit down in some wildflowers and grab a journal,
Okay,
uh,
those are the good questions to keep.
and reflect. I mean, honestly, I'd say, I mean, most recent, and why I'm having this opportunity to have a conversation with you is around this entrepreneurship, because it's interesting because to your question earlier around when how do I get into it? What was that process? You know, just even my relationship to that identity. As I reflected, I was like, well, I don't even know, like, I know how to run and nurture others. I can successfully support and manage other organizations, other teams, other companies, right? Things of other people's. But when it comes to our own thing, for some reason, we just become a different person. And so, as I thought about what it would be like for me to run and what I'm building, I just had this beautiful workshop with Christina of Remedia, who's helping me kind of think of my brand and the organization. And as we were kind of talking through it, if just like she's having me draw some things out because we center around creativity. And she's like, you're using these broad strokes. You're using these, like, because I talked about a theme of freedom, right? Like, why I'm doing this is for, is to be free. And so here we are, like, I'm doing these like art things, and I'm still doing it now. Like, she's like, you're doing these broad strokes, and I think that's so. As I reflected and thought about like what I'm building, what I'm putting together, as it's like, you think of things past, you think of your present, and you think of your future. And so I realized how there were many examples in my life that I didn't quite understand. Like, I didn't know. Like, I was just telling my mom that I was doing this that part of this podcast and this other workshop that I'm doing, and my sister was like, "Oh my god, it's like when you did you had an ad out in the paper." My mom used to prepare taxes, and I was like, "You did an ad?" And so we're just like reminiscing and talking about our childhood. She's like, "I remember I would hear it," and so we were just remembering these stories. And so I didn't, I was like, "Oh wow, I didn't put two and together." Like, there was entrepreneurship in my family, and there was business owners, but I never really called upon that. I never really thought about it in that way. And I think that's a lot of in our communities. And so what's been an aha moment for me is just to understand and make those dots of like, our culture, our communities have so much knowledge, so much, there's this ecological knowledge, business knowledge, right? I mean, the amount of wealth in our communities that's not regarded because it doesn't come from a traditional. It's not packaged. It doesn't come out in like Eurocentric ways, right? The things that you learn in an MBA program, we can get a master class in like the villages and communities that many of us come from, but it's not valued in that way. And because we use different language, our systems, the way we run them, are very different, and it's not rooted in capital or capitalism. It just surfaces so different. So for me, like, my aha moment of like understanding that I had that knowledge in me, even though I didn't get a proper MBA. Technically, I'm an urban planner by degree. don't know. I do use those elements in my work, but
I'm a
right,
mathematician by
yeah.
degree.
A whole other conversation is about why we get into student debt. Again, just what we think is, and I say that with Pod because I have a really good friend who does some really great work in working with underserved and immigrant communities to get their college degrees. So I understand the importance of that, but I also understand that we're in a different system as well, and so um, you know, getting that kind of college education isn't necessarily equal, intelligence or right like there that information that type of knowledge is so abundant in our communities, and I think so for me to be able to, I don't want to say translate, but really embrace and understand those learnings and be able to share it as value, I think is something that really motivates me to continue building out the work that I'm doing.
That's awesome. So, one of the things I mentioned during the post was that, like, the way you describe yourself is tech for good. Can
Mm,
we elaborate a little bit more about what tech for good is and what's your mission in Tercero Solutions?
sure. No, thank you for that. It's funny. For good is a term that many can interpret. Even in my mission statement, I used to say mission. I partner with mission driven organizations, and then I switched it to mission aligned, and I may switch it again because Chevron thinks they're mission driven, Walmart thinks they're mission driven, and they don't align with what I believe is a good positive mission for the world. And so, same tech for good. I mean, right now in the tech industry, it's actually a really low bar. It's almost like just don't do harm. I don't even think we can say that there's a for good quite yet. And so really it's making sure that there's tech equity. So I'm sure we all have heard terms like the digital divide, right? Or even on from a funding perspective, dollars don't go into um, you know founders that are black or brown. So tech for good is science. Technology is something that's always been with us. We've had technology and science uh, from time immemorial, and so the tech that we see now, the tech that we know now, it's serving a very particular subset of people, and it's harming a very large amount of people. I mean, we look at what's happening in the Congo. We look at what's happening, in frontline communities with technology. And so, I think for me, tech for good is to make tech more inclusive. Bring in voices that haven't been represented to meaningfully participate in the creation of technology, the distribution of technology, the visioning of technology. I mean, technology can be such a great asset for so many communities, but it also, right now, as we know, creates a lot of harm. I mean, the buzzword, which let's see, how long have we? We're almost 40 minutes in, and just now saying AI. So that's actually pretty good for a podcast, I think, because that's probably the first thing that's said when you talk about technology is AI, which for folks that are in tech know that AI has been around for decades. This is not it's not a new technology. However, the version that we understand is the generative version is is more accessible now to a consumer. So I think that's the piece that everyone's kind of getting all excited about. But these technologies have been around for quite some time. If you talk to developers and people that have been in the space, I mean, you see the number of voices that are of course trying to be um, repressed, but the biases that is basically a reflection of the biases that are in our society that are being perpetuated through these technologies. And without regulation, then we're in trouble because these technology companies are just kind of functioning without any kind of accountability. And if we think the markets are going to correct for that, we've seen where that has not. And so, it's really important for us to be at the forefront and to be part of building the technology. And again, part of how they get applied. And but I mean, examples of tech for good. I mean, we have so a goal of mine this year is to not be as much of an ableist, right? So really understand ableism and be a better ally for different able bodies. And so, I mean, there's so much technology that's emerging around. So that I saw this app where it gives you uh, like a roadmap of like areas that are wheelchair accessible and have different ADA type of things, right? Not groundbreaking, but you'll be surprised at how hard it is to get this information for folks that want to be able to like just plan an afternoon. And so there's also techs that connect you with um, resources, right, based on whatever need you may have. So, I mean, those are very basic examples, but I mean, the possibilities are endless. There's a friend of mine connected me to this Instagram account that's saying, what if our indigenous community, the Maya, the Toltec, right, like we're still flourishing. Well, we're here. We're not gone. We're here. But if our communities were the dominant communities now, what would that look like? So it's almost like the virtual space of what it would look like if we like indigenized everything. And so just to be able to have this dreamscape, I think is like the beauty and the possibility of technology.
Hmm. So, what does Tercero Solutions is like? What's hot in Tercero Solutions right now? What's your goal for 2024?
I am in humility mode. I am building. So a lot of what I'm doing now is just receiving, listening. So I have some great clients that I'm working with now that are really, I think, helping me shape and think of what I want this company to be. Similar to what we talked about earlier, I have communities that I mean, I'm in the number of Slack, Discord, Mighty Network networks that I'm in. That I'm constantly just seeing what folks are doing. What is needed in our communities. I mean, I have a handful of journals. One of them is my business journal, and the number of ideas I have in there of like just spaces that are just gaps in this entrepreneur space that I would love to help fill. So just right now is really just setting a foundation for what the seeds, right, creating the soil, the making sure the water is good, making sure that I'm putting in the right, have the right lighting. And so like I'm just building that garden and just making sure that all my pieces are coming together, and then I'm building something that's going to be healthy and bountiful. And so I think that's my goal, is to have that strong nutrient rich foundation, so that when things blossom, when they will, I'll be ready for it.
I want to take just do a quick reset. I know it's 43 minutes into the conversation. I want to just thanks a lot of people that are connecting.
Oh
Like
yes, please.
here, Kinga saying hello, beautiful friends. Actually, if you see me looking towards the side, I have the actual event playing on the left side because I
Oh
always like
good. I should
to see
probably do that. I should have done
yeah, who's connecting and who
that.
I don't necessarily see here. So I see Eldonor Lobato joining from Brazil, which I don't see the comment coming through StreamYard. So thank you, Eldonor, for being here. I see Lisa. I see Dr. Betkar. Anybody else who's connected and wants to say hi and just ask Kim any questions, feel free to do so. We love answering people's questions. So that's what we're here for. We're here to serve. So, with that said, Kim, what would be maybe one or two I don't know if to call it tips or advice or anything like that you may want to share with the audience, from the point of if they're thinking to do a move or to accelerate their business and they're second guessing it, what would be your advice for them? Oof.
Right. Take a breath. I mean, again, I think this has kind of been a consistent theme right throughout our conversation is we have a lot attacking our nervous system right now. And so it's give yourself grace. There's I'm sure a lot of conflicting messages, we get in our head, balancing just being able to be in a dream space where you can just think about, I mean, it's like what you could build without having any kind of restrictions, right, or limitations, to like, no, I can't because I have these very, very, practical things that are in my face right now that I need to address. So um, I think for folks that are thinking about making a pivot, I'd say I'm a planner, right? I'm a strategic thinker, and so I would say kind of reverse engineer. So maybe just think backwards of like, okay, if I want to do this, then I would love to see me in this space, during this date, during this time, right? And then just work your way backwards. Okay, so if that's my North Star, this is what I want to get to, then start thinking about, okay, what do you need to get there, right? So whether it's a savings plan, whether it's connecting with folks that are in the role that you want to aspire to, maybe having some conversations. So set some goals so that you feel like you are taking some actions and some steps to get there. And again, ask for help. Like there are so many folks that are willing to help you. For a while, I was doing a lot of cold networking on LinkedIn. Yes, I did that. And it was interesting because I had at least two folks tell me, white men, because looking for senior leadership roles in tech, so like C level, VP level, and who actually said the only reason why I responded to you because I saw that you were female and I know how hard it is for for women in technology. And we're like, whatever you need, let me know. I just was really open and generous with their time and their information and resources. And so, you'll never know who's going to give you that right advice or make that right connection. Some of it is timing, and so just be open to receiving opportunities in ways that maybe you didn't expect. So, as someone who is a systems thinker, an operations thinker, I'm also a creative, and I'm also a little in the clouds, if you will. And so it's that nice balance. So I think having some guardrails and some plan to kind of keep to help you feel like you're making some progress, but also just again breathing, and just being open and allowing that creative side. I just finished the book The Artist's Way, so I think maybe
Oh,
I'm in that little creative zone, right? But just like letting yourself be open and to receive opportunities may surface in ways that you may have not even thought about it because you were so much in your head. So just kind of allowing yourself to have a little bit of there you go.
I knew
I
I
did the
had
audiobook.
like I mean, this is not to make promotions to Julia Cameron, but for anybody out there that is looking for a way to get out of your own head, oh
Mm.
my God, is this a powerful book?
It's great. It's great. I mean, I think all these so like some folks like whenever I do my tests, I come out like left brain, right brain. Like I'm always like you fall into all these different spaces. Like I don't always fit into a box neatly. So I love that I'm able to kind of dabble in my creative, dabble in my logic, practical. Same thing. Like I think my femme energy and my masculine energy, I tap into and I embrace both. And so I think just being open to to opportunities, but again, like just be in community. Ask for help. The worst thing that people will say is no. And so just don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't be afraid to not be perfect. Don't be afraid to take risks because those are all things that just I think what makes us successful people is to one believe in our own capabilities, but also not do it alone. And I think that that will get you a long way.
So I have someone asking to see the book again. It's The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. So here it is. It's really powerful book because it's meant for everybody, not just people who think they are creative or people who have been creative a lot of portions of their lives. This is a book that it's meant for everybody to be able to tap to your inner self, so you are able to declutter your mind and open space for information to come to you. And as a result, drive your own creativity. So I'm a true believer that everybody can be creative. We just haven't been able to tap into it. So these
And
books
it looks
allow.
different for all of us, right? Like it
Absolutely.
looks different for all of us. Like sometimes organizing your room is your version of creativity, or how you cook your meal is your form of creativity. I mean, everyone, how you take notes. If you, I don't know if you pay attention to like how people organize their notes,
Oh yeah.
right? Like it, like our brain, just taps into different parts. Again, we're all just balls of energy, right? And we have different things that kind of motivate us to do. So sometimes we're driven by our head, we're driven by our heart, sometimes we're driven by our gut. And so just being open and allowing ourselves to tap into that is not always easy, because again, we have a lot of things that are distracting us from that, or telling us that that's not important, or that's a little weird.
Mhm.
But I think the more that you, and everyone, there's different techniques. Like that's what that book. I'm always like trying to figure out how other people share and tap into it. And so that's one way that may not work for you, but yeah, and I'm sure there's others. I'd love to hear what other people have used to tap into that.
For me, my biggest creativity comes, this is hilarious, when
Mm,
I'm either take a shower, like when I'm there sitting, and especially when I wash my hair, it's like all that information. It's like
mm.
it was washing away all the old, and it's allowing the space for the new. So I do have a lot of like downloads during my bath time. And I also have a lot of downloads when I like sit in my bike and start my ride. Like it's like I sit and immediately I need to keep my phone next to me, because it's like all these nuggets of information and things come up for me, and I'm like recording. Like every time I'm riding my bike and I'm recording myself, just to make sure that I'm capturing, because I feel that it, for me at least, a lot of things come in, and if I don't pay attention to it consciously and write it down or document it, it's like it came and it went and it disappeared, and then like what was it? It was a great idea, but I don't know what was it. We have a comment here from Michaela. She says, "Do you advise taking small step in leaving corporate and moving into entrepreneurship, or just take the leap to alleviate the anxious thinking?"
Well, I mean, again,
Question.
everyone everyone is so, I mean, everyone's lived experience is so different. So to take one person's, like, X, Y, and Z, I think that would be almost dangerous, right? To say this is how you would do it. So I think it depends on how, a little bit of how you're wired, and a little bit about what your experience is in terms of like your financial, right? What obligations you may have. And so, I mean, I have so many stories of women who left the workplace just because it was so toxic, right? And it was like their mental health, their physical health would have suffered if, and or gotten to some really just it was not a good situation for them. But they had to exit. They really had no choice but to get out of that environment. And so if you are able to have a choice, right, then just say, what is it that you want? Why are you leaving corporate? right? What is it, the reason that you have this desire to get into entrepreneurship? So a lot of it is like your why. What is it that you're changing? Because some of what you think you're leaving in a corporate environment, you may still perpetuate in your entrepreneurship life. So I think it's important to understand kind of what's the reason why you're making that shift, to determine whether or not you it's right for you. If you're not sure, plenty of people have, and I don't want to perpetuate like you must be productive with your time with at all times, right? Like how first in, like get up early, go to bed late, right? Like your whole time has to be being productive. But there are a lot of folks that may have, if they have the opportunity, may start something just to figure out what does this look like, right? So they may start a side business. And again, I don't perpetuate like side businesses because people need to survive. I think everyone needs to be able to have affordable healthcare, housing, right? I think all these things should be a right, not a privilege. And so like to be able to do that, just to figure out, is it something that I want to do? But really, I think getting in tune to your why is going to be really important. Is going to be important for you to figure out whether you want to make that leap. And then depending on what you're getting into, like if you're getting into like CPG or a good, right? There's supply chain, there's inventory, right? There's a lot more to building a business than, let's say, a service business that may not have a lot of overhead. And so some of it is a little bit practical. So I would say if you're able to get into like an entrepreneur program or a workshop that gives you like the 101 of like what it takes to start this type of business, insurance, certifications, what are the costs? I mean, California has the highest cost to register a business versus in another state. And so maybe getting a little bit of that practical knowledge, and then also I think grounded by your why and what that business looks like for you, I think will help you figure out if staying corporate, because having a 9 to 5, having bennies, right, having some of that, being able to, get some salary increases, hopefully, if your company does that, that's not a bad thing. Like corporate isn't necessarily, it serves many people, right? And so if that's working for you and you want to, just maybe make that transition over time, then let that be your timeline. But if it's something that is calling you and you know that you want to make that shift, then just as much as you can educate yourself on what that will look like for you to avoid any pitfalls, so that you're not like making any shortcuts into kind of that next phase, right? Because entrepreneurship is very different than corporate, whether or not you're going to have employees, right? There's just a lot of different compliance and considerations when starting your business.
I think what you just shared with Michaela is amazing. I would add
And
on
I'm
top.
just realizing who this is. This is family on here. So I got so into it, and I was like, wait a minute, I know this person.
So
Hi, Michaela.
I would add, Kim, to what you said, um, and I'll share a tiny bit of my own personal experience, and also because I am a mindset coach that helps people actually do the jump from corporate to entrepreneurship. Um, I would say that preparation is key, right? Even if you are in a toxic environment, what you if you don't work within yourself and heal, whatever you energy you have there,
Hmm.
you're gonna bring into your entrepreneurial journey. So I
Absolutely.
think it's really important that whenever you do the jump, you do it in a towards energy, not in a moving away energy, not moving
Hmm.
away from the anxious thinking, but more into the potential of what entrepreneurship will bring into your life. As someone who is in the early stages of entrepreneurship, I've been doing it for less than 2 years. Money is critical
Absolutely.
because there in entrepreneurship there's ups and downs, and if in my case when I did the jump my husband wasn't working at that time, it meant a lot of shifts in our personal life, right? um, I was blessed that I had a great severance that allowed me to take the leap and do what I wanted, right? But not everybody is blessed that way. So if you can actually prepare financially, it's really important because there's gonna be so many ups and downs in the journey. as you scale, as you get your name out there, as you brand yourself, that if you add on top of that the pressure of the money, it's like so much more harder. And
Right.
last but not least, I would say mindset. Make sure you're working on your mindset even before. Like, make sure you prepare yourself, get yourself, if possible, a coach, or get yourself someone who can guide you. There's actually an organization called or score, I think it's a
Score.
school.org, where you can actually begin to tap into mentors that are free, to start to get an idea of what entrepreneurship looks like. So, yeah, preparing yourself is critical, and that mindset is extremely critical, because there's going to be a process of getting rid of detoxing from the corporate world,
Absolutely.
the way entrepreneurship works is completely different. Like, the consistency of the income, you have to design your business in a way that brings consistency of income. You have to network, you now have to invest in yourself constantly. So if you are thinking of doing the jump, I would encourage you to start to invest on yourself now that you have a job. So by the time you do the jump in entrepreneurship, that's embedded
Right.
in your DNA, because
Right.
it's a
Let your salary be your initial investment, right, into your business.
absolutely, absolutely. Now, going back, if the environment is toxic to the point where it's detrimental to you, there's many different things you can do to kind of move away from that, and towards what you want. Always focusing on the towards, not the away. And but if you don't heal that, if your thinking is the same, if your energy is disrupted within your corporate world, you're gonna repeat that in your entrepreneurial journey. That's why I
There's a
see.
lot of unlearning, right, that we
Yeah,
have to do, right? Because
absolutely.
we, again, I think it's a lot, some what I was saying earlier, just like unlearning some of those behaviors that we may have not realized we picked up.
Absolutely. So I see this a lot with people shifting and changing companies. They're like, oh, I'm quitting this company because I am miserable. And then they start to apply to multiple jobs out of misery, out of desperation. That's exactly the jobs that you're going to attract. Now, the first 2 months might be heaven, but once heaven, like once the honeymoon is over, things start to fall into place. And then you're going to start to see the exact same people appearing in your life over and over and over. So until you do that inner healing, that inner work, right, then you're going to be continuing to repeat it over and over. So, yes, Michaela, agree with Kim. Every person's journey is individual, and needs to be based on your why. Your why is super mega important. It should be your driving force.
Absolutely. No, and I appreciate you talking your experience with that because that's often what we don't hear, right? We hear like the high level, but we didn't hear about this person had a severance pay or this person, had their mortgage paid off or right, like everyone's situation is so different. And those small, those little uh, differentiators can make a big difference, right? That's kind of the nuance of this world. And so I think it's important to not put these blanket like advice that you hear out, like make sure that it's a good guideline, but then you really have to get into your own unique situation to figure out for what's right for you.
Absolutely. And going to that point that you said about the severance, I made a decision. I lived in New Jersey. I had a house. We sold it. We moved out. We moved out to a place where the cost of living was going to be less. We cashed on whatever money we had from the house to create a safety cushion for us, right? And then, so we prepared ourselves, and we did it in a way because I had that severance package. I was blessed, right? I was actually blessed, and I know that that's not everybody's opportunity, but given that I was blessed because of that. I'm able to reflect and say, oh my God, if it wasn't because of this, I don't know how I would have made it happen. So it gives me the opportunity to tell people, prepare yourselves, because the more prepared you are, the better it is.
And I think going back to community, um, some folks call it. I don't necessarily like saying using this term. I have to find a better way of describing it, but they say your personal board of directors, right? So like, how did you know that you could, right? Some of those decisions that you made. I don't know if that came, I'm sure conversations with your husband. I don't know what other folks were advising you, but it's important to have those people that you can go to that are experts in whatever that area is.
And
So it's
diversity, making sure
diverse of thought, right? So
there's
maybe
family
someone
members.
who's good at
Mhm.
taxes, or someone that it has finance, and some of that may be paid, right? Some of that will be people that you may know. Some of it will be resources that you invest in. But having that those folks that you go to for that advisement in those areas, and yes, I appreciate that call in around keeping it diverse for sure.
So I like to call them collaborators, because in
And
one way or
collaborators. Yep.
in one way or another, they're influencing and collaborating to what my business becomes, right? At the end of the day, I'm the decision maker, but all these people are in my network, in my proximity, and they become collaborators directly and indirectly.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Never alone. See, this is our theme. We're never alone.
And that's the thing. There's for me, that I would say, if I could go back in time, which I know that there's no regret, to be honest with you, but if I could go back in time and change something, I would say the moment I felt in my heart that corporate wasn't for me, I would have started to prepare, and I didn't. And
Mm,
second thing is, I would have expanded my network with people that are entrepreneur. So I would have that that expansion and that security blanket to be able to know where to reach out and who would be the people who would help me move my roadblocks. I didn't have any of those when I did the jump into entrepreneurship. I was basically, I had, I didn't have any of those. I knew deep down in my heart that there was a bigger purpose for me, and that it was meant to help people. But I wasn't defined, and I knew coaching was going to be a part of it. But I had I had looked at doing certain certifications, and I never there was never the right time for me. It was,
mm,
or I put
right.
some hours to work for the corporate world. It was never there. And then the network, my network was mostly, when I decided to go into entrepreneurship, my network was mostly people within the corporate world. Now I needed to start to expand and reach out to people who were more diverse and would provide a different perspective to what I was experiencing, which was cool. But those two things you can actually do while you're still having a corporate job.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I love that that you shared that moment of feeling like I don't have, right? But I think that's the piece is we just don't realize it yet. And it's okay if you don't have all that put together, it will come. And again, the more you ask. Now there may be resources that may not be what you need, because when you attract everything. So there's a little bit of that protection energy we need to be careful of who we attract. But you will find those folks, and they'll come. And just back to that emotion that you were asking when we kind of kicking off this conversation. One thing that I also that someone shared with me, because you're going to go through a lot of different feelings that you don't even realize that's what you're feeling, right? Like you're going to be in your head, you're going to be in your heart, you're going to be in your gut, right? Like all of that's going to come out. And if depending on how long you've been in the space that you're in, you know we we grieve things. Like I believe our businesses are just our beings as well, right? They're a reflection of our of our ecosystem. That's how I treat my client businesses. That's how I treat my business. And so, having been in corporate for however long you've been, you're gonna grieve that when you leave. You're gonna grieve. I didn't know how to name that, and someone said, "You're technically grieving this
It is.
experience." And so, some of that. So we were talking about unlearning. We were talking about not as so just being able to process and decompressing if it came. Now, I don't want to assume some of you may be thriving and being like, I don't know what y'all talking about, but I'm enjoying and I'm having, right. I'm learning, I'm being challenged, right. So if you are having that great positive experience, wonderful. That's many of us do, right. That's it's not necessarily the switch because you're switching from a bad or negative situation by any means. However, when you do make a switch, you need that time to make that transition, and like, and again, it's, some of that's like that change management of like something new, something different in my life, and so there's also that piece. So I appreciate you talking about like the emotion of it, because there is that relationship piece, and having to like almost feel like you're breaking up and you're starting something new, a different relationship with you and something else. And so giving yourself some of that time to process and figure out how to work through some of that for yourself.
And Kim, I think it's very dependent on where you are in your life. Like, for example, if you lost your job, like the way you're going to feel is completely different than if you made the conscious decision. Now,
Absolutely.
at the end of the day, there's still going to be a grieving process. There's still going to be a detoxing. There's still going to be like a mindset evolution.
Right.
Still going to be a big transformation that needs to happen, because what got you to the point of success in the corporate world is not necessarily what's going to get you the success in the entrepreneurial.
That part. Right. Yep.
However, I feel and I compare myself a lot, which I know we shouldn't be comparing ourselves, but I compare my journey a lot with people who have not had the experience of being in a corporate world for a long period of time, or had senior roles within a corporate world for a long period of time. And I see a lot of very early and level entrepreneurs that come in, and there's certain skills that they're lacking because they haven't had that experience. And I do believe that coming from corporate, you build a, a, a like a truck of skills that are completely useful and will give you a competitive advantage in the entrepreneurial world. However, there's going to be a whole bunch of skills that you have to build as you're there.
Absolutely. And one of my favorite is creating really complex Excel formulas.
I'm that so Kim, I'm the Excel queen. Like everybody's talking about pricing, and like I've been in conversation with people and they're thinking about their business, and I'm already building the spreadsheet, putting
Right.
the what they're what they're what how they're gonna invoice the first year, the next month. I'm creating that whole projection, and people are looking at me like weird, and I'm like, no, I know this comes from the corporate world. So
Thank you for
yes.
indulging me in that one.
I can't believe that it's been an hour and 13 minutes and we've been together here. And I think we could easily continue this conversation for another hour.
We knew this when we first connected.
I know. We're not gonna push it. I
No.
think what it does is it actually creates the environment for other conversations to come in the near future. So stay tuned. Who knows what could come in the near future? With that said, Kim, how can people find you, or if there's anything that like you want to share with people once they connect with you, anything you may have for the audience?
No, thank you for that. You can visit me on at tercerosolutions.com, or visit me on Instagram. It's spelled Tercero Solutions, but instead of the IONS, it's UXNS. I got a little, it's my creativity coming out. So I had to give you a little something there. But really, I mean, as we said, we I think we both love to be of service, and so I appreciate being in entrepreneur spaces. So if folks want to schedule time with me, there's a booking link on my site. I'm more than happy to schedule a virtual coffee with you if folks want to have a conversation around entrepreneurship, technology, want to talk about how to just make this world a little better than where we left it. I love to connect with you, so feel free to book some time on my calendar, and thank you for this opportunity, Brendelis.
I actually put both links in the comments in LinkedIn. So
Oh,
I
thank you.
link, and I put the website. So yeah, both of them are right there.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. I look forward to following everyone's work and
Yes.
seeing what we come up with.
And Kim, I'm really humble and appreciative that you are in this space with me today, and that you're sharing your perspective, your point of view, and your experience. I'm really grateful that we got the opportunity to connect through Latinas network. Uh, See, networking is important. Um,
Absolutely.
and I look forward for what the future might bring. And for everybody who's in the audience and has made it all the way to the end, I really appreciate your support. And if you can share the link to this event into your audience, we truly appreciate it. And if you can leave a comment just to let us know what you learned and what was useful for you, then we also appreciate that. With that said, it's Monday, January 20. Oh God, June, January. Oh my God, May 20. Why am
May.
I thinking of January? I should write that down. There might be a message right there. So it's May 20 of 2024. May is almost gone. I wish you an amazing week and very productive week. And if you need to connect with us, feel free to connect with us. In the meantime, I'll see you in 2 weeks, and sending you all a lot of love.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.